The investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election has hung over the Trump presidency since the beginning, and it's not over. Tonight, Brett Baer takes a look back at how it all started and where it may go as we head into the new year.
So help me God.
Well before Inauguration Day, the Russia scandal that would follow him throughout his candidacy and into the White House and throughout 3 years of his presidency was set in motion. In July 2016, an official counterintelligence probe was opened into Russian interference in the election after an Australian diplomat, Alexander Downer, contacted the FBI about a May 2016 encounter with Trump campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos, in which Downer said Papadopoulos told him the Russian government could assist the Trump campaign with damaging information about Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. With that info, the investigation launched. The gears were then in motion, and the question had been planted. Were individuals with the Trump campaign coordinating with the Russian government in its interference activities?
Paul Manafort has resigned as campaign chairman amid a controversy over some consulting work.
In the days after his victory, President-elect Trump began to build his cabinet.
Decision day for Donald Trump. The president-elect makes his first major national security picks, delighting conservatives and enraging Democrats.
In early December 2016, one of those choices, new National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, met with Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak at Trump Tower. Flynn and Kislyak later exchanged texts and phone calls amid the Obama administration's decision to impose sanctions on Russia in retaliation for hacking the DNC. President-elect Trump praised Putin's decision to not retaliate, tweeting, "I always knew he was very smart." At the beginning of 2017, in an intelligence report, the director of national intelligence stated Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election, with the intent to help President-elect Trump's election chances.
If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities.
Why would there be any contacts between the campaign? Chris, this is all a distraction, and it's all a part of a narrative to delegitimize the election and to question the legitimacy of this presidency.
On February 13th, the White House announced Flynn's resignation after it was revealed he had misled Vice President Pence about his sanctions-related conversations with Ambassador Kislyak. The FBI's investigation expanded.
The FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
What kind of threat do you believe Russia presents to our democratic process, given what you know about Russia's behavior of late?
Well, certainly, in my view, the greatest threat of any nation on earth, given their intention and their capability.
Breaking out.
And then,
it's a bit of a stunner on a Tuesday afternoon. The president has fired James Comey.
I was going to fire Comey. There's no good time to do it, by the way. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
In response, within days, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appoints former FBI Director Robert Mueller to serve as special counsel to take over and continue the Justice Department investigation.
There is no collusion between certainly myself and my campaign, but I can always speak for myself and the Russians, zero.
After Comey's firing, a meeting between President Trump, Ambassador Kislyak, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the Oval Office raised even more eyebrows.
Was he telling the Russians that firing Comey was taking off legal and political pressure?
Chris, that's not my interpretation, certainly, of the conversation. And I think what the president was trying to convey to the Russians is, look, I'm not going to be distracted by all these issues that are here home. that affect us domestically.
After reports the special counsel's probe was widening into whether President Trump attempted to obstruct justice while in office, President Trump tweets, quote, "I am being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. Witch hunt." The investigation became a family affair amid news of a previously undisclosed June 2016 meeting between Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, and Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya. Don Jr. issued a statement that he and the Russian lawyer had primarily discussed a program about the adoption of Russian children.
Did you ever meet with any other person from Russia that you know? I don't even know. I've probably met with other people from Russia, but certainly not in the context of a formalized meeting or anything like that, because why would I? In the grand scheme of things, how busy we were, it was much more important to doing this. This was a courtesy to an acquaintance.
Fast forward to December, Michael Flynn pled guilty to making false statements to the FBI, admitting he lied to FBI agents during his interview about 2 discussions he had with Kislyak before President Trump took office. As the new year begins, Democrats continue to raise alarm bells. Congressman Adam Schiff tells reporters at a breakfast, quote, "If you want to blind yourself, then you can look the other way." In March, Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz launches an investigation into alleged surveillance abuses by the DOJ and the FBI during the 2016 presidential election. And former FBI Director James Comey talks to us about the controversial text messages between the FBI's Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, in which they were revealed to call the president a loathsome human, an idiot, and root for Clinton to win the election.
If you knew back then, when you were in charge of the investigation, and you saw those texts between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the level of animus they had against President Trump, what would you have done?
I'd have removed both of them from any contact with significant investigations.
As the scandal continued, a number of former Trump officials faced consequences. Manafort, Papadopoulos, former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, among those who received prison time. Attorney General Jeff Sessions was shown the door in November.
Just hours after the midterm elections, President Trump's Attorney General is cleaning out his desk at the president's request.
In February, William Barr was sworn in as the new Attorney General. Weeks later, he delivered a summary of Mueller's report to Congress, which stated that the investigation found no evidence that the president, any of his aides, or any American coordinated with the Russian government's election interference. Democrats fired back.
There's ample evidence of collusion in plain sight, and that is true.
Because the concern, I think, for most people is that is he compromised by a foreign entity, whether it's Russia or anyone else?
This is one of the problems, I think, that allowed the media to just go so far off the rails, is that especially those 2 cable networks, but also even newspapers, pretty much prohibited dissent from ever being heard, so they constantly fed each other these conspiracy theories and told each other that they were on the right track every time they advanced it further, and never really had to confront anybody who questioned or challenged them in any way.
In April, a redacted version of the Mueller report is released, and while it confirmed extensive efforts by the Russians to meddle in the election, quote, the investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. In May, Barr testifies on the report before the Senate Judiciary Committee.
I do have people in the department helping me review the activities over the summer of 2016.
Days later, he assigns John Durham, the United States Attorney in Connecticut, to open a separate investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation. Robert Mueller speaks out, carefully emphasizing that his report did not exonerate the president.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
Can you give me an example other than Donald Trump where the Justice Department determined that an investigated person was not exonerated because their innocence was not conclusively determined?
I cannot, but this is a unique situation.
Well,
This past fall, the investigation led by Durham and the Attorney General Barr transformed from an administrative review to a criminal inquiry. That change grants Durham the power to subpoena witness testimony and documents, convene a grand jury, and file criminal charges. The White House and Congress anxiously await the results of that investigation. Then this month, the Justice Department Inspector General's report about the origins of the FBI's investigation and its subsequent surveillance
came out.
We found, and as we outline here, are deeply concerned that so many basic and fundamental errors were made by 3 separate handpicked investigative teams on one of the most sensitive FBI investigations after the matter had been briefed to the highest levels within the FBI.
I was wrong. I was overconfident in the procedures that the FBI and Justice had built over 20 years. I thought they were robust enough. It's incredibly hard to get a FISA. I was overconfident in those because he's right. There was real sloppiness. 17 things that either should have been in the applications or at least discussed and characterized differently.
In Washington, Brett Baer, Fox News.